a child growing up in the late 70s and 80s, I used to intensely dislike Transport House. It seemed to me a stern monument to the ideal of the dictatorship of the proletariat, with its long row of angular workers at the base of the mural disappearing off into infinity like a reflection of a mirror on a mirror. They represented an ideal that seemed divorced from human emotion, individuality, and creativity. The mural stares at you all the way down Victoria Street, and that image for me epitomises the grey permanent Sunday school that Belfast was for me at that time. But as time has went on and the pogrom against post-war architecture and indeed the ideals of the post-war settlement continue, I've begun to warm to the building. Much of the 50s and 60s new builds and the attempts at social engineering behind them have fallen out of fashion, and indeed a lot of it is an eyesore, but we're in danger of throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. If you pull down Transport House, what sort of cookie cutter office block architecture will replace it? It's as valid as the Albert clock that stands opposite, as much as it's aesthetically and ideologically polarised from the type of building that the Albert clock is. The Albert clock itself is a monument to ideals of the imperialist era. Devastated by 2 world wars, the empire declined rapidly, and the conservatism of that era was replaced by these new liberal ideas where people had the power. Heady ideals that are now under threat. The last half of the 20th century is a time of evolutionary and revolutionary change like no other in history, and this building for me encapsulates the best of that. And I know there's an awful lot of horrific carbuncles built after the war, but this is an internationally acclaimed example of the internationalist style of architecture. It encapsulates the early post-war attempts to create the new dispensation, and we should no sooner pull it down than pull down the Albert clock or anywhere else. This building is something that Belfast should be proud of, not just for its aesthetic quality and for its uniqueness, but for what it represents to us culturally and historically.